So I was an ultra endurance drug addict for a long time early in my career. When you talk about ultra endurance athletic, it's such a common story that people like me with kind of a predisposition to addiction end up, if they can get beyond that part of their lives, can use that as a superpower in things like ultra endurance sport.
Right.
Because the mentality of the two things are eerily similar. You know, I grew up as a normal kind of high school athlete, did some things in college that were athletic, discovered that I was an amazing drinker, and genetically speaking, fifth generation really. I mean, a lot of the drinking in my family could be traced back, and that was a route that I took for 10 years. And once I finally kind of got on top of that, I discovered that running was a really great replacement for those behaviors, and that it helped alleviate the pressure. People drink because they're in pain. It's not an enjoyable thing for most people that drink too much. It's a pain reduction thing. And then running kind of did that same thing for me. And, you know, and then I started doing big adventures all over the world, and I've been doing it for 33 years now. In 2027, I'll be 64, but I'm going to go from human powered from the Dead Sea. I'm going to do a free dive in the Dead Sea. I'm going to come back up, I hope. Otherwise, it's like the world's shortest expedition. And then I'm going to run all the way across the Arabian Desert, which is Jordan and Saudi Arabia and Oman, a couple thousand miles.
Wow.
At the tip of Oman, I'm going to sail across the Indian Ocean. I also don't know how to sail, so it's
Solo?
going to be solo. No,
Oh,
so so right now I am in the process of some serious cramming for a test. When I get to Mumbai, India, I'll mountain bike all the way to western Nepal, and from there I'll make my way to Everest Base Camp, and I'll climb to the top. So it's the lowest place on the planet to the highest point.
How long of a journey?
It'll take about 4.5 months, and it's about 4,500 miles. You would be like horrified to see how I did that 20 years ago, because even at 43, I was deep into ultra endurance sports, but all I did was train. Like, my only solution to getting better was training more. And I wish, of course, in that crystal ball way that we all do, that we could have a time machine and I could go back and give myself a lecture about recovery.
Yeah.
You know, because now my top priority every single day is sleep. My second priority is sleep. My third is hydration. Like, my fourth is nutrition. You know, way down here is actually training, because one thing that comes with, you know, age and seasoning, like Dead Sea to Everest is another 4.5 month expedition. I'm not training for an Ironman. Like, I don't need to peak on one day.
Right.
So I need to show up at the start line healthy, even more than I need to show up fit. Like, I just need to be healthy and ready to sustain myself for that period of time. So right now, my biggest priority is finding ways to be coached and coach myself to a place where I can not only recover in this next year leading up to the expedition, but when you're going to run 50 miles every day, how do you then recover at the end of that day and get up the next day and do it again? So that's my priority. There's so much information now that it's overwhelming, and the vast majority of people that you ask, like, why they're doing a particular diet or behavior, it's because their neighbor's doing it, or they saw it on social media. They're doing it.
They.
Right, so they're not using science, they're not using data, they're not using anything other than, you know, popular, it's like a populist thing. I literally had this conversation last week with a neighbor, and he's like saying, oh, my uncle lost, 40 pounds doing the keto diet. And I'm like, so? Right? And that has nothing to do with you.
Right.
Maybe that would work for you, but first get some tests done. You know, I'm lucky in that I've had access to sort of concierge medicine to a certain degree, where I have a doctor who can order certain types of blood tests so that you can see, you know, I always tell people, if you don't know where you're starting from, how can you possibly know where to go? So my focus is on education of myself primarily. People ask me questions as if I'm an expert. Most people in my position, even if you've done a lot of stuff, maybe I'm an expert, maybe in me, but I'm not an expert in you.
Right.
You know, and that's the point that I always make. Markers that are there kind of forever But then some things like testosterone,
Right.
I now am on testosterone therapy, which I never thought that would, I mean, I was the guy that was, I mean, come on, I mean, you know, whatever, like that's never going to happen to me. And all of a sudden I started losing muscle mass, and like my doctor was so used to handling it that he basically said, look, man, it's not personal. So if
Biology.
it's biology. And like, so, you know, and just like now with women, there's so much news right now.
Oh yeah, reversing everything on HRT that
Right.
we've been told for the last 20 years.
Yeah,
And
no,
think
and
about
like
how-
you just have to suffer through menopause, and it's like,
How many
why?
women have literally suffered in silence
Yeah.
for all these years?
And so why not use the science that is available and understand,
Exactly.
you know, understand as much about this weird machine that we have.
It's the root of all evil.
Inflammation is everything, because it's your whole, you know, we think of inflammation as being like a joint, but inflammation is your whole body.
Acute inflammation,
Your
fine.
heart,
That's your
your-
body's healing
Yeah.
process. But when we're talking about chronic low-grade fire in the body, it
Yeah.
literally is the root of every other evil that you might be struggling with.
Well, I think the role of stress and obviously, you know, cortisol levels and that sort of thing, it feels to me, and this is only intuitive, I don't know, I actually don't know any of the science behind it, but it feels like it changes everything.
It does.
Like, cause like those levels skyrocket and all the other things go down or are equally affected.
Metabolically, it is a storm.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like an inflammatory storm.
So you've built this structure,
Yeah.
but then the storm comes through and can wipe
So-
it all out or tear away parts.
I don't.
Yeah.
I think people truly underestimate the impact that stress truly has. You know, yes, we know a certain amount of stress we need.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
eustress, but where it's that chronic stress, you know, that chronic fight or flight, and so many people in today's society are stuck in that broken fight or flight cycle, and it just has such a detrimental impact into every other body system.
You tend to be at the start line if you're a first timer and all you can think about is being finished. But that's not the good part.
Yeah,
All the good part
you
is
miss the
this stuff.
journey.
Right. And so if we can just like take it a step at a time, but you have to have help.
You don't need any
It's super
special
simple.
training.
No.
Breathe in for 4, hold
Yeah.
for 4, out for 4,
Yeah.
pause for 4.
Yeah.
It just, you know, when you start feeling that stress ramping up, give yourself a few minutes of just, you know, centering
Makes a
into the
huge
breath.
difference.
Absolutely.
It does. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.